She built one of the longest-running prepper channels on YouTube, kept uploading through a pandemic that sent millions of new viewers to her exact niche, and never once went viral. The woman behind the AlaskaGranny channel has spent more than a decade teaching Americans how to survive when everything breaks down, and almost nobody outside that community knows her name. By the end of this story, you will understand exactly why that happened and why it might be the most interesting thing about her. When people name the biggest prepper channels on YouTube, they tend to reach for the same handful of names, the dramatic ones, the ones who built brands around worst-case scenario fear and stacked subscriber counts by chasing news cycles. AlaskaGranny is not any of those things, and that is precisely the point. She runs a channel that has been active since the early days of the prepper community on YouTube, before most of the names you know now had even started filming. She uploads regularly, consistently, without gimmicks or crisis narratives. Her content is about long-term food storage, outdoor cooking, budget prepping, practical household skills, and what it actually looks like to live a prepared life in one of the most remote and demanding states in the country. No bunker tours, no doomsday countdowns, just the kind of knowledge that used to travel from grandmother to grandchild around a kitchen table, now preserved on video for anyone willing to find it. The channel sits at roughly 150,000 subscribers. That number has grown slowly and steadily over more than a decade. It is not a failure, it is something rarer. It is an audience that came looking for exactly what was being offered, and stayed. The prepper community on YouTube is overwhelmingly male. Channels built around firearms, tactical gear, off-grid construction, and survival scenarios dominate the top of the algorithm. A woman building in that space, without leaning into the drama, without adopting the tactical aesthetic, was always going to be working against the current. She did it anyway, and she is still there. And here is the part that changes everything about what you just heard. The Alaska in the name is not aesthetic. It is not branding. She is Alaskan. Built from a state where being unprepared is not a personality choice. It is a risk. Alaska forces a different relationship with self-reliance. Long winters that arrive fast and leave slow. Supply chains that can be disrupted by weather, distance, or infrastructure failures that would be a minor inconvenience anywhere else. When the road is closed or the power is out, you either have what you need or you do not. That relationship with preparedness is not learned from watching videos. It is absorbed from the land itself, from generations of people who understood that the margin between comfortable and desperate was measured in what you had on your shelves and what you knew how to do. She has described her channel as being about becoming more resilient and resourceful, about using what you have to make what you need. Those words are specific. They do not describe survivalism. They do not describe doomsday preparation. They describe a practical, lived philosophy that has nothing to do with fear and everything to do with competence. Her channel intro video, posted in 2017, functions as a mission statement that has never really changed. She teaches outdoor cooking, smoking, grilling, campfire preparation. She covers emergency preparedness, cleaning solutions, laundry, travel, gun reviews, ammunition storage. The range is deliberately broad because the goal is not to prepare for one specific event. The goal is to build a person who can handle whatever comes. The name AlaskaGranny is worth examining for a moment. It raised eyebrows when she started. She was younger than the name implied, and some viewers noted that immediately. But the name was never about age. It was about a posture. Grandmothers, in the cultural memory of rural America, are the people who know things. They are the ones who can stretch a dollar, preserve a harvest, and keep a household running on almost nothing. That identity was a deliberate choice, an alignment with a kind of practical, domestic wisdom that the prepper community was largely ignoring. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. YouTube's recommendation system runs on watch time, click-through rate, and engagement signals. For prepper content, the algorithm learned early what those signals look like: high-emotion thumbnails, urgent titles, fear-based framing, and videos that position themselves as breaking news about the collapse of civilization. AlaskaGranny never made those videos. She made practical ones. How to store water for emergencies, long-term food storage on a budget, Dollar Tree prepping for the family. The titles are functional, the thumbnails are clear, the content delivers exactly what it promises. That is not a formula that ignites viral spread. It is a formula that builds a reference library, a collection of videos people return to when they actually need the information, rather than watching once for the adrenaline rush. The tension here is real. Prepping content that performs well on the algorithm tends to be driven by anxiety. The best performing videos in the space lean hard into the idea that something terrible is coming and the viewer is not ready for it. That emotional hook drives clicks, drives shares, drives the kind of watch patterns that YouTube rewards. AlaskaGranny built a channel that rejects that hook entirely. Her approach is, here is the information, here is how to use it, now go be more prepared than you were yesterday. What she built instead of viral reach was trust. Her comment sections consistently describe the same experience. Viewers who came for one video and stayed for 100. Subscribers who describe her content as calming rather than alarming. People who say she taught them something their own family never did. That audience loyalty does not show up in subscriber counts the way panic-driven content does, but it shows up in retention. And it shows up in the community that assembled around her over more than a decade of consistent output. What happened next is the reason this story matters. In March of 2020, grocery store shelves cleared out within days. Toilet paper, canned goods, dried beans, bottled water, gone. Millions of Americans who had never thought seriously about food storage suddenly understood, in a very immediate way, why people talked about it. Prepper content on YouTube saw a wave of new viewers that dwarfed anything the community had experienced before. Channels that had spent years building audiences in relative obscurity suddenly found themselves in front of millions of people who were looking for exactly the kind of information they had been making all along. AlaskaGranny was ready, not because she had pivoted to chase the moment. She had not. But because she had built a library of videos over years that answered exactly the questions people were suddenly asking. How do you store food for a long time? What should you buy first? How do you prepare a meal from pantry staples when you cannot get to a store? Her most viewed video reached over 110,000 views, a number that reflects a real and sustained audience interest, rather than a single viral moment. For a channel her size, that figure represents something meaningful. The moment when a specific piece of content crossed from niche community into broader reach because the world suddenly cared about the topic. What she did not do, at any point during that period, was chase the fear. While other prepper channels pivoted to near-daily updates predicting supply chain collapse, societal breakdown, and the end of the grocery store era, she kept making the same kind of content she had always made. Practical, measured, focused on what you can actually do, not on how scared you should be. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. Prepper communities on YouTube sit at an unusual intersection of practical homesteading culture and political identity. For a significant portion of the audience, preparedness is tied to a specific worldview. Distrust of government institutions, concerns about centralized food systems, and a political orientation that skews heavily conservative. AlaskaGranny has mostly stayed out of that territory. Her channel is built on skills, not ideology. Canning recipes, campfire cooking, and emergency water storage do not require a political position. But in 2020, she made a video encouraging viewers to buy Goya Foods products in support of the brand during a national boycott. The Goya controversy that summer was explicitly political. The company's CEO had appeared at the White House to praise the president, triggering a boycott campaign from one side and a counter-movement from the other. Her video positioned her, at least in that moment, on a clear side of that divide. The response was what you would expect from a politically charged moment in an already polarized year. Viewers who disagreed documented their reaction publicly, but no major controversy followed. The channel kept uploading, the community held, and she returned essentially to the content she had always made: food storage, household tips, budget preparedness. That episode is worth noting not because it defines her channel, but because it illustrates something accurate about how creator identity works in tightly knit communities. Her audience was not built around political alignment, it was built around skill transfer. When she stepped briefly into political territory, the foundation held because the foundation was built on something more durable than ideology. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. There is a version of this story that treats AlaskaGranny's longevity as unremarkable. She built a channel. She kept uploading, it grew slowly, so what? That version misses something important. The prepper and survivalist content space on YouTube is one of the most male-dominated niches on the platform. The top channels by subscriber count are overwhelmingly men. The aesthetics of the space, tactical gear, firearms, off-grid building, extreme wilderness scenarios, are coded masculine in ways that both attract male audiences and discourage female creators from entering. The channels led by women in this space tend to share a set of characteristics. They are more likely to focus on food storage, household preparedness, and budget strategies than on gear, firearms, or tactical scenarios. They are more likely to use collaborative, teaching-oriented tone rather than authoritative or warning-based framing. And they are significantly less likely to appear in YouTube's recommendation engine alongside the high-performing male-led channels in the same category. AlaskaGranny covers firearms. She has done gun reviews. She discusses ammunition storage. She hunts and fishes and engages with the full range of outdoor life in Alaska, not just the parts that are conventionally coded as feminine. But her tone is instructional rather than commanding. Her approach is practical rather than tactical. And those distinctions, in a recommendation algorithm that is measuring engagement patterns rather than content quality, have real consequences for reach. She built 150,000 subscribers in a space where the ceiling for male-led channels frequently climbs into the millions. That gap is not explained by quality. It is explained by the structural mechanics of how recommendation systems amplify content that matches the existing dominant pattern in a niche. And the dominant pattern in this niche was established by male creators a long time ago. She never talked about this publicly, until now. As of April 2026, AlaskaGranny is still uploading, consistently. The videos that went out in the first months of 2026 follow the same pattern they always have: budget prepping at Dollar Tree, emergency food supplies for the car, water storage and filtration, pantry meals built from shelf-stable ingredients, barter items for post-disaster scenarios. No dramatic pivot, no rebrand, no announcement of a major change. That consistency, over a span of more than a decade, is rarer than it sounds. Most channels that start in any given year do not reach 10 years. The ones that do tend to either grow into major media operations or quietly fade as the creator's interest shifts. AlaskaGranny did neither. She stayed the same size she was, a well-regarded, trusted channel in a specific community. And she kept producing. The average video on her channel draws around 4,800 views. That is a modest number by any metric that prizes virality. But context matters here. A video on emergency water filtration that draws 4,800 views is not a piece of entertainment that was consumed once and forgotten. It is a reference resource. It is the video someone sends their daughter when she moves to a new city and asks how to start building a pantry. It is the video that gets pulled up again when a winter storm knocks the power out for 3 days. That kind of usefulness does not compress well into subscriber counts or view metrics. It shows up in the comments, where people describe using specific videos as practical guides months or years after they first watched them. At this point in the story, most people walked away. What she did instead is the part nobody talks about. There is a broader argument embedded in the story of AlaskaGranny that the YouTube algorithm will never surface on its own. The prepper and preparedness community built something real in the years before and during the pandemic, a distributed library of practical knowledge that proved genuinely useful when supply chains failed and grocery stores ran empty. The channels that built that library did not, for the most part, get the credit. The channels that monetized the fear did. The pattern is not unique to this niche, but it is particularly visible here because the knowledge gap between panic-driven content and practical skills content is so stark. AlaskaGranny represents a specific kind of creator, one who decided early what the channel was for, held to that definition through trend cycles and algorithm shifts and politically turbulent years, and built something with actual utility rather than something with maximum reach. That is a harder thing to sustain than it sounds. The financial pressure to chase trending topics, to make the fearful video, to align with whatever is drawing clicks in a given week. That pressure is real for every creator who depends on the platform for income. She generates income through Amazon affiliate links. The channel description has carried that disclosure for years, a small percentage of purchases made through her link, at no additional cost to the viewer. That model rewards sustained audience trust more than viral moments. It scales with the kind of loyal, returning audience she actually has, rather than with the kind of spike-and-drop audience that viral content delivers. The channel is built, in other words, exactly the way she built her pantry, one thing at a time, with attention to what lasts. The story of AlaskaGranny is the story of what happens when someone refuses to build for the algorithm and builds for the audience instead. Over more than a decade, she assembled something that the recommendation system consistently undervalued and the community consistently returned to. A library of practical knowledge, delivered without drama, without fear, and without the theatrical urgency that the top of the prepper niche runs on. She is still making videos in 2026. The topics are the same as they were a decade ago, because the knowledge is still useful and people still need it. The channel sits at 150,000 subscribers and climbs a few hundred every month. Slow, steady growth that mirrors the pace of its content. What comes next for her is probably more of the same, and in a space that runs on constant reinvention and trend chasing. That continuity is worth something. So here is the question worth sitting with. The prepper space on YouTube made a lot of creators famous for telling people to be afraid. AlaskaGranny spent the same years teaching people not to be. Do you think the channel that helped more people is the one with more subscribers, or the one that kept the pantry stocked when the shelves went empty?